at El Nuevo Dia in the business area, business section. And he worked for 10 years for the Caribbean business, and he will be running the next panel. So please help me welcome Dennis Costa.
Thank you so much. How's everybody? I hope everybody's doing okay. So, as he said, my name is Dennis Costa. I'm one of the editors at the business section at El Nuevo Dia. And in a few moments, we will be speaking with Dennis Gonzalez. He's the Deputy Secretary for Disaster Recovery at the Housing Department in Puerto Rico. And I want to note, I think this is a momentous occasion. I think this is the first time that two people named Dennis are on the same stage in Puerto Rico. So, historic moment for sure. But more importantly still, we're gonna talk about the Community Development Block Grant Program, Disaster Recovery Program. And we're talking, obviously, billions of dollars that are slated to come in federal funding. And we have a lot of ground to cover, so without further ado, please welcome Dennis Gonzalez. Okay, we're gonna go here this way. So, as I said, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get right down to it. We're talking billions of dollars, and it's been delayed. It's been assigned, but the disbursement of these funds has been severely delayed. First, let's talk about the first assignment, the $1.5 billion assignment. Can you tell me what's the status of that money right now?
So first, I want to thank for having me here. It's a great opportunity to set the record straight on what the Department of Housing is doing for the recovery of Puerto Rico. So on the first $1.5 billion, even though we've spent upwards of $20 million, we're not that different from other states. We're in the same arena as every other, Texas, Florida, and Virgin Islands. But what is most important, and for our part, we already have $1 billion committed in contracts right now, waiting to get executed to start work. So our housing program, which is this our signature program, the R3 program, already started construction of the first 50 homes this month. Next month, we're going to be looking at 200 homes, 500 homes a month after. So we have contracts in place. Work is starting, and we are going to pick up. And once we pick up, I'm pretty sure we're going to blow everybody's mind out of the water since the expenditures.
So now that you mentioned contracts, are we talking stateside companies, contractors, local contractors? How is that being distributed somewhat?
So we really do not distribute contracts. Bidding process in Puerto Rico is the same as any other state. We do abide by local and federal laws, so we cannot force or oblige a company to not allow them to bid. So in Puerto Rico, in that sense, we allow every stateside and local company. We do want to encourage stateside companies to do joint ventures with local companies because of the experience that local companies have on the way of doing business in Puerto Rico. But the distribution as it is right now, it's mainly more than half of the companies that have contracts with us right now are local companies.
And I heard that even stateside companies are subcontracting. So even if it's indirectly, there's a lot of local participation, even if it's U.S. based.
Yeah, most of our contracts are based on construction. So even stateside companies subcontract here. We have a rough number of about 70% of subcontracts from stateside companies, our subcontractors from Puerto Rico, and then at the end of the day, you know, the workforce that needs to execute the work on the ground level is also local. So most of these contracts, the funding goes to local either firms or employees.
And what about the $8.5 billion allocation? I know there was a significant development regarding that yesterday, so you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's actually 5 tranches now. We got the first 1.5, the second 8.2. And that $8.22 billion, yesterday, Deputy Secretary Montgomery brought in the grant agreement signed by Secretary Carson. So that just means the floodgates are open. We are moving forward with a lot of programs, especially economic development programs, incentives for small businesses, and then looking into very big or bigger investment opportunities for projects around the island.
But however, there are certain restrictions that are part of that allocation, including final approval by the Fiscal Oversight Board and so forth. What message can you give the investors that could be thinking, oh, this represents still more delays in the process?
I understand sometimes it could be frustrating even for us, but the message we want to give out is permanent housing manages the funds adequately. And for me, and for everybody probably here in the same room, the important part is that funds are going to be managed adequately. They're not going to be wasted or just handed out incorrectly. Oversight means compliance. Oversight means controls. We're not afraid of controls. We're jumping over every single hurdle. We're running every time they move the goalposts. But at the end of the day, I do want to stress out, the programs are going to be ran. They are going to be executed. Projects are going to get built, and the recovery of Puerto Rico is going to happen. It could take, a bit more than we would like, but it will get there. So the funds are there. They're not going to go someplace else to build any other structure in other parts of the country. They're going to be used in Puerto Rico by stateside or local firms.
As part of the controls set by the White House, they appointed Admiral Peter Brown to oversee basically the whole process. Can you talk to me a bit more about the dynamic between the local government and the Admiral? Have you guys met? Have you talked it out, the whole process through?
So actually, we met today. We had a meeting today with Admiral Brown. His expressions were that he will convey to the president that he feels confident that the government of Puerto Rico is doing the right thing, and they're spending the money, and they're spending the money as they should. Controls are in place. Money's not going to get diverted to anybody's personal pockets. Money is going to be used for the recovery of Puerto Rico. We expressed and we stressed out the amount of oversight and compliance we use to make sure that things are done right. So he was very happy with the progress and with all the controls we have in place. So at the end, he'll go back happy, and he'll just try to be that obstacle buster for the recovery of Puerto Rico.
So let's move on to a topic that I'm sure a lot of people here present are interested in, being how can the private sector chip in terms of investment in this reconstruction process?
That's a very broad question, because private sector is the one that's going to rebuild the island. Permanent housing doesn't build anything. We don't have contractors, we don't have employees doing anything. It is the private sector. So opportunities really depend on what business is. So is it a private firm looking to do big infrastructure projects on the construction side? Obviously, capacity-wise, you can't build a multi-billion-dollar or a multi-hundred-million-dollar project with small capital. You need capital. So investment opportunities with just doing joint venture with local firms is one part. But if you see our action plan, there's a couple of programs that go into closing that loop on making sure the project is economically feasible. So if we're looking to do projects in the hospitality sector, etc., there are programs identified and focused on incentivizing the development of projects that go into better the economic development opportunities in Puerto Rico.
Going more specifically, in the process, I understand that the housing department is a liaison to HUD, and then it coordinates with Core 3, right? Is there any opportunity for private investors to get into that process?
Well, yeah. Again, construction is a very big thing on the recovery of Puerto Rico. Obviously, you need to build stuff to make things more resilient. What role are we having with Core 3? Through the Core 3, there's going to be about $50 billion worth of reconstruction projects across the island. That is FEMA funds. But those funds are not free. Those funds come with a restriction that they give 90% of it, so they give $45 billion, and the government of Puerto Rico has to provide $5 billion. In that case, the permanent housing is going to provide that cost share so that those $50 billion worth of projects are going to get done, and they get executed on a timely manner. So we're going to be working hand in hand with the Core 3 to make sure those projects come to a conclusion.
So let's talk a little bit more in detail about the programs within CDBGDR. I understand there are like 8 that are now running completely. Specifically, the home repair and reconstruction or relocation program, R3. I think that's one of the big ones. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's the biggest one. Obviously, we are the Department of Housing, so we need to do housing, and HUD is the one that provides the funding. So housing and urban development needs to do housing also, and it was the single largest damage on the island. That right now is a $800-something million program, but we have up to today around $3 billion worth of participants through the door. Opportunities, again, construction. Construction is going to be a big thing for the recovery, and the investment and the augmentation of capacity for construction companies, both stateside and local, are good. I understand should be a very good investment opportunity here.
Any other programs that lend itself particularly well to private participation?
Well, our action plan has 26 or 25 programs. All of them in one shape, way, or form could be an opportunity. In the case of investment opportunities, the signature program is the Investment Portfolio for Growth program. And that program, what it in layman's terms is, it closes the loop on the amount of funding, on the amount of money you would need to make a project feasible. And when I mean feasible, it could be a hospitality, it could be a hotel, it could be infrastructure through a P3 organization, it could be healthcare. Again, whatever goes into both the recovery of Puerto Rico, and obviously we say the hotel's not recovery, well, it is creation of jobs, which is one of our main goals. As long as it has a tie back to the disaster, we could definitely fund what will be closing the loop on what's the feasibility, economic feasibility of a project through a small percentage loan program.
How much money in federal allocation are we talking about here in this program?
I think it's around $800 million, but that's what we have up to today. We could increase or decrease based on the need. If we receive more projects, proposals that we have funding for, we have the capacity to change allocation based on need. So it could be 800, it could be 500, it really depends, or it could be much more than that. Really depends on how much project we receive and how feasible are they.
There's another program, it's called Puerto Rico by Design, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that one?
Puerto Rico by Design is basically, what do we need that we don't know we need? You could sit down with a focus group and determine what projects Puerto Rico needs. Do you need to do shoreline restoration, etc. But you can sit with another group. It's going to tell you another different set of projects. So we didn't want to close the opportunities that Puerto Rico could have for a more resilient island, and we created that program so we could do sort of like a competition. That is not something we created, actually, something New York created. And their program is called Rebuild by Design. We just tweaked the name a little bit and gave it our Puerto Rican seasoning on it. But it is going to be very similar to theirs. Their program is up and running. We obviously read all the hurdles and the problems they had. We're not going to do the same mistakes they did. But our program is going to be basically looking for opportunities in Puerto Rico. Obviously, all of them tying disaster recovery and economic development to make sure that when the funds are depleted, we don't return to where we were before. We return to a better position with more job creation and better economic opportunities.
And how are things going with the low-income housing tax credits? I understand there's $400 million worth that is on the pipeline.
It is actually going amazing. I have to say, our first project already started. It's in Caguas. It's twofold. It's elderly housing. 200 units on elderly and 238 units on multifamily. We approved recently another project in Rio Piedras, in Paseo de Diego, which is in Rio Piedras, and we have four more on the works. The additional $300 million is, again, to make projects feasible using low-income housing tax credit as a way of getting more affordable rental housing to the market of Puerto Rico. Same thing as I said before, it has $400 million, but if we receive more than we really need on proposal projects, we could definitely assign more money. We want to build as much as possible through the investment of the private sector.
Going back to the agreement that was delivered yesterday, apart from some of the other restrictions that were placed include eliminating the $15 an hour salary for construction workers, and also it's calling for reform on the property registry. What's the position of the administration right now regarding that, and are you open to negotiating those points?
Well, I'm not going to go into the position of the administration. We are going to comply with the grant agreement conditions. As a permanent housing, that contract or that agreement between HUD and Puerto Rico is, in layman's terms, it's a contract of adhesion. We have to abide with their rules, so we have to comply with what they put out there. At least in our part, we're not going to implement the $15 an hour. Again, do we have an option? We don't. It's either we don't, if we comply and use the money, or we don't comply and just give back the money. I don't think that's going to be an option for us. I don't think that's going to be an option. We are going to do whatever's needed in order to get the recovery of Puerto Rico done. I don't think that's going to be a big problem. It's something relatively easy to manage. We are having conversations with HUD. We just want to make sure that we don't step on anybody's toes. But we are going to comply with every single thing that the grant agreement brought to us. 126 pages worth of issues we need to comply with, and we're going to comply with every single one of them.
During our previous conversation, you mentioned that the Puerto Rico Housing Department has not received a single accusation or about misuse of funds. You have a clean record in that regard. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're the single most audited agency in the history of the United States. Just to give you an idea, we were answering an audit last week while we were audited, while we get notified that we had another audit in 2 weeks, while we receive another notification of another audit from another agency. We're not backing out. There's no way they're gonna make us back up. We're actually augmenting our staff. Oh, and by the way, not a single finding on mismanagement of funds have been found. One of the findings they brought was like the file wasn't in the exact order they wanted. We're like, that's not really a finding. That's based on your personal interpretation of how the file should look. But again, we're not gonna back away from this. Our team is 100% committed on making this a successful recovery. There's people out there 2.5 years after the hurricane, they're still living on a blue roof. And at the end of the day, that's the reason we're here. We don't really care on the amount of oversight we get. What we need is to focus our team into getting that recovery effort done, obviously with the help of the private sector.
So before we go to a Q&A session, can you talk a little bit more? Again, private investment, how can it chip in? How can it help? How can it participate in this reconstruction process of the island? So
the first thing is we're uber audited. There's no way we can mismanage funds. It's really impossible. So first, trust the government. I was hearing the last panel was kind of different from what I'm saying now. I really have to say there is hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in opportunity with the government. I come from the private sector. I was sitting on your side just 3 years ago, and I will go back to the private sector when I leave my position, when my service to this island is over. Trust the Department of Housing, what I have to say. The Department of Housing is managing a multi-billion-dollar reconstruction. There is dozens or not hundreds of opportunities to invest. Understand the action plan. See where you fit in. If you're a contractor, look for procurement opportunities. If you're an investor, look for ways so you can join venture with local firms so you can augment their capacity. If you're a developer, see what you need. Do your funding analysis and determine what do you need to make your project viable. And then obviously our doors are always open. Permanent Housing is open to any conversation, etc. Obviously we're not going to commit to actual program that has to go through a process, through the guidelines we're implementing, and just trust the way we're managing this. But don't trust us because I'm saying you trust us because you're looking at what we're doing. Look at our oversight, look at our process, look at our procurement opportunities. Just look at them, study them, and then you just participate. These programs are open to anybody. We're not committed to somebody. You don't need lobbyists to go to the Department of Housing. You can go on your own. So again, there's a lot of opportunities. The rebuilding of Puerto Rico is going to bring a lot of opportunities, both in the construction and investment side. So just you see the government as an opportunity to do good things.
Excellent. Okay, so we're out of time. So thank you very much, Dennis.
Thank you.